Hi, welcome to the zoo, and we're your hosts, Caitlin.
And Josh Zaniga. Okay, well, welcome back. It's another week. This week has been pretty wild. Like, the world, especially in the Southeast, has been kind of crazy. You know, I feel like Florida has just kind of had it rough these past couple of weeks. They just got hit by two hurricanes. Hurricane Milton went through there like a day and a half ago, and it's pretty wild watching that.
I think we both have had Florida on our minds. I think everybody has, it's just hard to feel like you can't, I don't know, just to know what to do, I guess, like on how to help. Because I see so many people posting all these different links of relief and things that you can send. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of them are going to the right people and everything. And then it's hard too, because if you actually went out to Florida, it would make it worse because then there'd be more people to, take care of out there and stuff. You were saying though, like certain areas were really, really rough and others weren't in Tampa. Because I know last week we had talked about you thinking about opening up a business.
Yeah, I've been thinking about opening a business in Tampa for a long time.
Yeah.
But some of the areas a little bit more inland with Tampa, they didn't get hit as hard, or there wasn't a significant amount of damage. Like Tampa absolutely got rocked. And so it wouldn't be correct to say that Tampa didn't like get damaged. It did. But I don't think it got damaged in a way that it would turn me off from wanting to grow a business there like 6 to 8 months from now. But Tampa and Florida as a whole definitely has like a special place in our hearts, me and Caitlin. I served my mission in Florida and specifically in Orlando. And I just have been in love with Florida ever since, like everything about it. Florida is just an amazing place, from the nature, the weather. The winters there are amazing. There's a reason why old people love to move there. And it's because it's pretty nice. I would say June through the end of August can be pretty rough, especially if you're a biking missionary and you have to wear white shirt and tie and pants all day long, and you're biking. Overall, the weather there is pretty nice.
I was laughing at a video I saw though online. There was a crocodile in somebody's kitchen during the hurricane.
Yeah, that's wild. You mean an alligator?
Oh, sorry, alligator. I always get it mixed up. It just, every time I see like the crazy animals and stuff, it just gives Florida just so funny to me.
So something that obviously nobody was going to talk about it because it's not really that important, but something that's interesting to think about. And again, we're not trying to like switch subjects quickly to make light of the situation in Florida. Like we really care a lot about Florida, and we pray for those that are suffering and struggling right now. But from a pest control perspective, one thing that's really unique about some of the bugs that live in Florida, they're these ants. They're called fire ants, red imported fire ants. They're actually not from Florida. They are an invasive species. But when flooding happens, they all get together in a ball and they float like a raft.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
And these are the ones that if you get bit, they can really hurt you.
Yeah. I feel like most people have gotten bit by that before, though.
Our son's gotten bit.
I've
gotten bit.
Yeah.
The thing that's weird about it is that when that hurricane and when that flooding is like
it's
happening,
going to bring up a lot of stuff, right?
Well, there's just probably like tens of thousands of floating rafts of fire ants, like floating balls of fire ants all over the place.
Dude, that's
crazy. And
crazy.
it's a part of how they get spread around. It's a big deal. It's a big part of how invasive species in Florida get spread around.
What about all the iguanas?
The iguanas, I don't know.
Who knows? They'll be chilling.
They can swim.
They can swim, yeah.
Yeah, they can swim. As of right now, we kind of need to wait and see with Tampa, but we are still planning on opening a business in Miami this next year. That's going to happen for sure. And Tampa, we just have to wait and see. But it's looking like it's still going to be possible.
So things have been moving along with the new office that you guys opened up. Been super exciting to kind of see that come together.
Yep, we have like our first kickoff party this next Monday, so we're pretty excited about that. We're pretty much it's gonna be like a celebration of everybody's accomplishments this last summer. Really just kind of set the tone for the rest of this next year. We just got an ice cream machine, like a soft serve ice cream machine. The sales reps wanted it. It's not cheap. And I also don't think it's very fun to clean, but
Yeah, that
they're going to be
was
the ones that clean it,
that was my first thought. I was like, who's gonna clean the?
not me.
I mean, I just don't see that happening. Your guys cleaning that up. It's probably gonna be my mom.
We'll see.
Does it have Dole Whip?
Yeah, I got Dole Whip.
That's sweet.
So if anybody wants to have some Dole Whip, just come over to the main office in Orem.
Have you ever gone to the Dole Whip, or sorry, the Dole Plantation in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you remember I told you this story?
I forgot.
This is like where I had the big argument with my ex-fiance.
Oh.
And then afterwards she put she took the ring off.
Oh, that's where it happened, was the Dole
Yeah.
Plantation?
Because I told her that I didn't like being corrected in a mean way in front of my family.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
now. But did you ever get a float? Like, have you gotten where they'd make the Dole and then they put the pineapple juice in it?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because they do that in Disneyland too. I thought it was the first place I had it, but I think it was kind of cool actually being at the Dole Plantation and seeing like how pineapples are grown and stuff. I didn't even know that pineapples are grown in the ground.
Where else would they be grown?
I don't know. I guess in my mind, I thought maybe they were on a tree or something. I don't know.
I mean, a tree's from the ground, though.
I know, but I'm saying like it almost looked like, I don't know, just they're in the dirt is what I'm saying. Like in my mind, I'm sure at a time, maybe I thought they're hanging off of a tree.
I mean, I think it is a tree. I think it's just a really short tree.
Really? It
don't
just
know.
looked like it was completely in the ground to me. Like it wasn't a tree. I could be wrong on that. Should we Google it?
Maybe it's classified as a plant. I don't know, but I thought it was a tree.
That's weird.
I don't think they really grow high though.
No, they don't. But I guess when I went there, I just didn't think it would look the way that it looked, you know? Yeah, it's a plant.
It's not a tree.
Pineapples are usually propagated from another pineapple plant rather than from a seed.
Oh, I guess you learn something new every day.
Fun fact. So I guess when it comes to like pop culture, I'm actually loving Dancing with the Stars right now. I don't think you love it as much, but
I can take it or leave it.
yeah. I just like supporting it because there's so many dancers from Utah that I think it's just kind of fun to support them. And
And I support you by putting down my phone and watching the dances with you.
yeah. And then I think it's fun too because we watch The Bachelor, and so they have Joey from The Bachelor on, which he's amazing. Like me and you watched a couple of his dances. Like I think Joey could win. Mm-hmm. He has a really good partner too, Jenna. I feel like she's really amazing. I was super, super surprised at how good he's done so far. And I just like him as a person. He just seems like a really good guy. And then Jen from Bachelorette is on too. I feel like she's doing pretty well. I don't know if she'll win. I mean, maybe there's a chance, but I did think it was really weird though, and this has been like all over TikTok, is the guest judge that they had from Kiss, Gene Simmons. He was super weird. Like I kept commenting to Josh like how weird it was. Like almost every single time they would get up and, you know, judge their dance or whatever, and he would always talk about how hot the girl was in each like partnership.
The man knows what he likes.
And I'm like, bro, let's focus on the dancing, like not how hot everyone is on the show. Okay, like we know that everyone's hot on Dancing with the Stars. But he got a lot of backlash for that, I feel like, because I think it just made some of the dancers and probably the viewers feel uncomfortable. And then people are just like, he has no experience, and so why is he giving like a 10 to this model and then a 5 to, I think her name's Phaedra? Like I swear it's because he thinks one's hotter than the other, and he's like, here's a 10, here's a 5. Like, what is this man doing? I think this next week they're having,
I don't think Phaedra was that good though.
I mean, she wasn't that good, but like a 5 comparatively, I just think was a little bit low. But Mark Ballas was one of the professional dancers. He's not anymore, but he's going to be a guest judge next week. So it'll be better to have somebody who actually has experience, I feel like. But that show's been fun to watch. I can't wait for the Disney week. I love when they do that because they have them dress up as like Disney characters and stuff. And anyway, I think it's a cute show. So if you haven't started Dancing with the Stars, you should.
When it comes to Jen, I'm just curious, when a bachelor or bachelorette goes through an entire show where they like get a date like 30 people, and then at the end of it they still end up single.
So disappointing. I think you take that chance though, no matter what, going on a dating show.
But is it because of them, or is it because of them? I mean, ultimately, I think that there is some accountability in it, like whether you choose the right person or not.
Oh,
'Cause I
100%.
think that-
Yeah.
Like I've regular like in a lot of the seasons, I feel like you're frustrated with who they pick
Yeah.
because objectively, like when you're not in the situation, it seems like the choice of who's like the better person is kind of obvious, but it's not obvious to them because they're in it.
Yeah. They have like the rose colored glasses on or whatever. Yeah, it's disappointing. I think sometimes bachelors, bachelorettes do pick the wrong person, but I do think sometimes they have good intentions of who they pick. And then sometimes the person just ends up not being the way that they thought they were, you know?
But is it usually the way, it's just not the way that they thought they were, but you already kind of knew from observing that they were?
Well, you kind of always liked Devin, though, the guy that she ended up picking. But a lot of the guys didn't like Devin.
I just like Devin because he didn't back down from that douche Sam.
Yeah, no, I know. But I think it could be easy to get confused. Like,
I also think, like, and this is me saying that I don't know anything about it because I haven't cared enough to, like, read up on it.
yeah,
I do think that The Bachelor, like ABC, they will smear the guy whether it's deserved or not. Sometimes it is deserved, but I think
yeah.
that sometimes it's probably not as deserved or maybe not deserved as heavy as it is.
I will say, since I've watched The Bachelor, I think pretty much from the beginning, I've seen almost every season. I do think, like, just the way that society is today in 2024, I do think that guys get wrecked harder than they used to. And I don't know if that, I just think there's a lot of movements of women empowerment and, like, I don't know, we've had this discussion before, but I just think that men for some reason are more like looked down upon, I guess. I'm not really sure why that is, but maybe it's because we have a candidate for, I don't know, president that's a woman. I don't know. It just kind of seems like, I'm not saying it's bad or good. It's just kind of the way that the world is going. And so maybe that's why.
I don't know if we want to talk like super in depth on politics on this podcast, but I'm just curious because there's something else that's happened in pop culture regarding her and a podcast that she went on.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
I mean, I can't really speak to it because I haven't listened to the full episode. I've just seen clips. Do you know if Trump has gone on a lot of podcasts?
Yeah, he has.
Okay.
Usually ones that are specifically known for being as vulgar as that one is.
Yeah. I guess people could say, though, that both candidates are going on podcasts, though, right? I mean, I do think it's a little bit odd.
I don't think it's off brand for Trump though. That's something that Trump has done for a while.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
but it
more
seems
sense.
like it's relatively new for her.
Well, just something that I had heard online is that Kamala is constantly doing press, just fluffy press, kind of like not doing these deep interviews and kind of going on these just more fun kind of podcasts or whatever. Because I know she went on 60 Minutes and then she went on Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper. And I think the reason why she was getting crap for that is because, like you said, it is kind of a vulgar podcast. Just like with everything going on in the world, it like wasn't the best timing, I think, to go on that specific, you know, type of podcast. So yeah, like I said, I haven't listened to the episode. I think they talk a lot about abortion and women's rights and all of that. I don't know. I think it probably wasn't the best move. I don't think a lot of people were impressed, but it is what it is. So it could affect her. Maybe it won't. Who knows? So many people have a podcast. So it kind of seems like a lot of people just like going on podcasts in general. So
Yeah.
people commented though, and they're like, she should have gone on Joe Rogan. And
Dude, she would never.
and they were like, actually, no, maybe she shouldn't have because Joe Rogan would have asked her the hard questions and she wouldn't have wanted to answer them or something. I don't know.
I think that Joe Rogan would have asked her more hard questions, not out of a place of trying to like pin her down or anything, but just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
I think that Joe Rogan, and granted, I haven't listened to his podcast, like full length episodes of his podcast in probably like 2 years. Not because I dislike him, but I just like the bite-sized clips sometimes, or if it's somebody that I really like, I'll listen to the whole thing. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have an incorrect idea of Joe Rogan and what his podcast is really kind of about.
Well, I didn't even honestly know who he was. I remember seeing a clip that you were watching and I'm like, dude, I know that guy. And I was like, I used to watch the show he hosted and it was Fear Factor, right?
Yep, it was
Yeah.
Fear Factor.
Yeah.
What would you say, though, is like the common view of Joe Rogan?
Oh, honestly, I thought he was more conservative than he really is. At least it seemed like when I asked
He's not
you.
conservative at all.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like that was my view. I thought he was more on that end. Like he does kind of look like a meathead to me a little bit. Like
Just because he doesn't have any hair anymore.
I don't know. No, he just kind of gives off that vibe of like he would get along with bodybuilders. You're asking me what I thought. It was Fear Factor. He looks like he works out and he seems funny. And I thought he was conservative. And then once you told me more about him, I was like, oh, maybe I'm totally wrong on that guy.
He has said that he is liberal and he usually votes Democrat, which is surprising considering how much like the liberal media doesn't like him.
But I think that's why I like him though, because I don't know. He just seems like he gets along with everybody.
He does get along with everybody.
Yeah. He's not super controversial, it seems like, but maybe
he is very controversial.
You think he is? See, I'm totally wrong. I don't know.
He's not.
Yeah.
He's not. When you actually hear what he's saying, he's just asking questions because he's curious. I really don't think that he has any viewpoints that are like radically controversial, but his podcast is like framed as a controversial podcast.
Well, there's a reason why though. His podcast isn't it like has been the most popular podcast?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest in the world.
So I'm just saying that you're always going to be, I guess, controversial if you're popular. So, but there's a reason why people like him.
I think he's painted that way by the media because they're threatened by him because he has a significantly larger viewership than CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all those, and Fox News. Like he's bigger than all of them combined.
Yeah. Yeah. Just interesting. I don't know. I don't think we really have been watching anything else religiously though, because
other than conference.
Yeah, LDS conference. We actually need to go back and watch some of that though. We haven't watched Saturday's session, which was really good though overall. No, but I think some of the shows we normally watch have been harder to get into. Like Love is Blind. So
yeah, for some reason, I don't know, just like the way that the first episode started, I just got like weird vibes from the people in that season. Like
do they seem like really immature or young? I don't know.
I don't know if young is the right word. There's some of them that seem like that way, but yeah, some of them seem immature, like the art dealer. Bro, nobody would know that you're filthy rich if you would just shut your mouth about it.
Yeah, he's like, I just really don't want girls to date me for how much money I have, but I just keep talking about my money. You're like,
yeah, it's like,
okay.
Then maybe don't talk about it. And then they'll like you for your personality.
Yeah. So far, I feel like we haven't been able to like attach to any couples. I don't know. We're going to keep giving it a shot.
But usually I'd say that we really like Love is Blind because it was one of the first shows that we ever watched together.
Yeah.
That and Outer Banks. Like those were our two shows that when we were like starting to date during the pandemic shutdown, like that's what we binge watched together.
Yeah. Outer Banks, I think, is coming out pretty soon. So that will be fun to watch.
Speaking of which, we actually found out recently that guy, the main guy, what is his name?
I think his name's Chase.
But we found out he's 32.
It is kind of weird when you find out, like you were saying, like they're playing a high schooler and then they end up being closer to your age.
Dude's like 28 or like 26 or 20. I don't know how old he was, but he's playing like a 17-year-old on TV. It's odd a little bit, but at the same time, he kind of didn't look that far off.
Yeah, no, he totally played it well. So I think it's how they dress them too, though. You know, like they make it out so they look young already, but then they kind of paint the picture too. They're wearing like Abercrombie. I don't know. Yeah.
Why do you think though that kids today look like 17 and 18-year-olds today look so much older than 17 and 18-year-olds did back like when we were that age?
It's social media. I mean, well, I'm thinking of girls specifically. Like, I just feel like girls wear a lot more makeup too, you know, than I feel like my friends used to. I don't know. And just the way that they dress. I'll look at girls who I interact with who just graduated from high school. And to me, sometimes they look older than that. And I don't know if it's the makeup, how they do their hair, how they dress, but it's almost like they want to look older, even though they're not older. That's the vibe I get. When it comes to guys, though, can't really speak to that as much. It seems like guys hold on to more like crazy hairstyles these days.
Mullets have definitely made a comeback.
Yeah, like mullets and perms and
the broccoli head haircut.
It's all right, I guess. But moving away from pop culture, but we've been talking lately about quotes and just, I don't know, self-reflection, that type of thing, I guess. And so we kind of were thinking this episode today, we could talk about a couple different topics, but kind of focus on a few different quotes and just kind of chat about our thoughts, you know, when it comes to self-reflection, grief, because I don't know, I just think the world right now, there's a lot going on. And I feel this kind of sadness and heaviness when it comes to natural disasters. A lot of people could relate and say that it seems like there's a lot of people that are passing away a lot younger too, you know, and I feel like I'm constantly seeing people losing a loved one, you know, and it breaks my heart, obviously, because it's only been a little over 3 months since my dad passed away. And I know grief is just never ending, I feel like. And so anyway, I think we want to obviously talk about the heaviness, but like add some lightness to it as well, and some hope maybe too, to just kind of the heavy world that we're currently living in.
That's the plan. A couple of weeks ago, I also kind of went into this like deep dive ADHD hyperfocus thing about light and like the nature of light. I learned a lot of things that are super interesting that I had never really thought deeply about. And I felt like I learned a lot. And there's definitely some correlations between self-improvement, self-reflection, truth, light, all those things. Like in my mind, I feel like a lot of them can be interconnected if you think about it that way. And so we'll also talk a little bit about that as well. I did have to sell Caitlin on the idea of including that portion of it because it can get kind of deep.
It's interesting though.
And it's 9 a.m. right now and we're tired.
So the first one is, a person without self-reflection never changes. They just get older. And that is by Dr. Nicole LePera.
I think that's 100% the truth. You know, self-reflection, being able to look at yourself as you are. I mean, if you just are walking around with your eyes closed and you're not able to observe yourself as you are, there's no way for you to measure yourself. And what's not measured can never be improved. That's true of life. That's true of business. That's true of relationships. There has to be a reference point for everything in order for it to improve.
It just kind of hit pretty hard thinking about, we've talked about this a lot throughout our dating, just kind of staying stagnant, you know, and not having an upward trajectory in life, I guess. And so just constantly wanting to improve, but also understand yourself on a deep level. And I think the biggest way that you can do that is going to therapy, you know, but I don't think that that's the only way. I think that you can reflect through meditation, you can reflect through, journaling, just talking, I guess, to people and their thoughts on you and how you evolve as a person. Or maybe you could even ask a question like, what can I improve on? Even, I guess you could ask a spouse or whoever, you know, somebody that like, you know, cares about you and you trust, but just constantly wanting to be your better self. I mean, we're always doing our best every single day, but if we can't look at where we were, where we're going, like, what's the point?
It's interesting because self-reflection can lead to caring more about others and a unique perspective. But and this comes to my mind because we just got back from Greece, but do you know where the term narcissist comes from?
I think you've told me this before. Isn't it from a Greek god?
He wasn't a god.
Oh.
He was just a man.
Oh, okay.
But there was a man named Narcissus who, I can't remember if there was like some like nymphs in water that he was having a relationship with, but I believe it was that way. Like some nymphs had fallen in love with him, but he came to the water and saw his reflection in the water and he fell in love with himself and he couldn't stop looking at himself to the point where he wouldn't drink water, he wouldn't eat food. He just didn't want to break eye contact with himself until he died. So you could say, like, what's the difference between that and self-reflection? Because he was looking at himself.
Yeah.
And we're talking about self-reflection.
That's an interesting point.
How do you make sure that you're not like Narcissus? I don't think that means that everybody's a narcissist if they're focusing on themselves, but I think we can all agree that there are times where people can be selfish.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
And they're focused too much on what's in it for them. But self-reflection kind of means something a little bit different than that.
Well, to me, I feel like if you're reflecting, you're thinking about ways that you can improve. So I think if you're looking at yourself, like you're an elevated person, like you're saying, Narcissus is looking at his reflection. I don't know. I just think you're looking at yourself like you don't need to improve. Like you're good where you're at, right? I mean, that's what I would say. Because when I'm really diving deep and thinking about where I've been, where I'm going, I don't know, things I want to improve on, I'm thinking about what can I do to get there, you know? Like I'm not okay where I'm at. I want to continue to evolve. It just, for me, it feels like we've said just staying stagnant. Like I want more. But that can also be detrimental too. Because sometimes when you want more, you're never okay with who you are at that moment, right? So I think there's still joy to be had in the present moment, but at the same time, not being okay staying there forever.
I think there's a lot of nuance to it. Like there's a lot of different ways that we could look at it. When I think about self-reflection, because a lot of times when you look in the mirror, if you're standing directly in front of a mirror, you can't see what's around you if you're looking right at your face. As long as your eye contact is on your face and on yourself, you can't see directly what's behind you or what's around you. You're focusing directly on what's in front of you. That's just the way that our eyes work. We can only focus on a very small area at once. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Mindfulness is a tool that I didn't understand for a very, very, very long time until like my mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's helped me with self-reflection in the way that we mean it in a positive way, more so than being selfish and just focusing on myself. The way that I like to view it is like when I'm wanting to try to get a different perspective or understand myself and where I'm at, I try to envision like my consciousness or myself sitting on a hill, watching myself at the present moment. And I try to like think about, okay, what is that guy thinking or feeling?
So you're pulling yourself outward and looking over yourself. Right?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull myself out of myself.
Yeah.
Which is, it sounds weird saying that, but that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to look at myself objectively and see where I am in relation to truth, where I am in relation to reality. And the reason why we're talking about things like this, just because of things that I dealt with as a child and experiences I had as a teenager, when I feel like I'm surrounded by people that have a really hard time like accepting reality the way that it is, and they're emphatic about it, or they're wanting me to accept it that way, or at some point I became aware that somebody's perspective, and they might really think it, might not be actually true. They could be really passionate about believing it, and it kind of scared me.
Yeah.
It scared me because I was afraid of ever being like that. Like why? Like it's just scary. The idea of not being rooted in truth and in reality scares me at a very, very deep core level. And for me, I think that's where a lot of my desire for self-improvement came from initially, was from honestly a place of fear of not wanting to emulate what it was, and because it feels like it's almost like it's unsafe. Like if you root yourself in this area where you can't see references or like objective reality, because you're so focused in on yourself and what your perspective is and your emotions telling you that what you're saying is, or what you're feeling is actually true, then I think it's horrifying. Like it scares me. It's like an existential fear that I have, is that my reality is not really real. I know that sounds super deep. But for me, I was wrestling with things like that when I was like 14 to 17, and it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's super odd, because it's one of those things where you do have to focus on yourself a little bit, but you don't want to do it to the point where you can't
other people's perspective, or
whether it's other people's perspective, right? Or just what it really is for what it really is. Like we live in an age right now where everybody's emotions are quote unquote valid, right?
Yeah.
And I think that honestly, in a lot of ways, that's a really toxic way to view it. If there's not an understanding that goes along with it, that yes, your emotions are valid because you're human and it's normal to feel emotions as a human.
But like we've said before, sometimes the emotions you're feeling, they might not always serve you, right?
No, well, yeah, they might not serve you, and
they might not be completely accurate, is like what you're saying.
A lot of times they're not accurate.
Yeah.
A lot of times your emotions lie to you.
Yeah.
Like they lie to you, and they're not representative of actual truth, of like objective reality. You could take phobias, for example. Somebody might be afraid of a spider, or I have like my weird phobias where I don't like swing sets. Is that swing set going to really hurt me? No, it's not really going to hurt me. But for some reason, my psyche and like things that happened to me when I was a little kid scared me so badly that my emotions now lie to me about it. And it's something that I have a really hard time changing, but it's not the truth. It's not based in truth.
Getting real deep on us. Another quote that came up on my feed last night is, "You are not an energy source for people who refuse to do their inner work." So just something to think about. I think we have to be really careful, like you said, to not lean too much on our emotions. Yes, like you said, they can be valid, but they're not always based in reality. But I think also, to go with that quote, people might look to you, me, anyone, to, I guess, get them out of the rut that they're in, you know? Because I feel like there's even been times in our marriage that I have been like, just tell me what I want to hear, or help me out, right? And in that moment, can you just tell me how much you love me, or you think I'm amazing because I'm not doing good, right? And I just want to hear it. But sometimes, you know, you think about it and you're like, maybe in that moment, I do need to hear the hard things, right? And I need to, or
It's a very dangerous game.
Well, I know.
For me to say something
No,
like that.
I'm not saying that you have to say that. I'm just saying, me doing self-reflection, like, truly a lot of those times it is up to you to feel better, to get better. Like, obviously people can help you through it. I'm not saying that, but like, you yourself putting in the work is going to take you way farther than you relying on somebody else, right? So if you're an energy source for somebody else, like somebody's going through something and they want you to save them, right? Or they want you to just tell them what they need to hear. It's fleeting. Like, it's not going to take you far, is what I'm saying. And so I think that you could even say there's like energy suckers, you could say, like vampires. And then there's other people who, I don't know, they lift you up, right? They don't take. They give. And so I think you just have to be careful at times to not expect that from somebody else, but also not let somebody do that to you. Because I know there's been times in my life too where I feel like I could save somebody or help them or tell them what they want to hear, and they'll get out of what they're getting out of, or they'll see how much I love them and they'll change or something, right? I don't know if I'm making sense, but I feel like it can go either way. You could want to rely on somebody as an energy source, or they could want to rely on you as an energy source. And neither one, I think, can go very far. That's just my 2 cents on that.
I think I also have a nuanced perspective with this. I understand what the quote was trying to say. Basically, that you don't want to allow yourself to be taken advantage of
by someone who they're saying hasn't done inner work or self-reflection, maybe, right?
And I'm not trying to like give people passes on this, but I think that there's some people who really can't. Like, they just don't have the
capacity.
They don't have the capacity to look themselves in the mirror in a way that's objective and not selfish, or their own version of reality. Like, some people, due to trauma or due to mental health, literally can't do it. As a man and as a husband and as a father, and as, I think that you could relate to this too, there's people that you and I love unconditionally that in some ways are stuck, and they'll likely always be stuck. I feel like in some ways I've been used as an energy source. I don't begrudge it though, and I don't feel like I'm being taken advantage of. It's something that I choose to give because of love that I have for them. And I don't have an issue with it. As long as it doesn't take away from you and my son. If I have more energy to give, I give it to those that I love. But if it's something that I feel like, and I mean, who am I to judge, right? But if I sense that they have the ability to, but they're not, just because they just don't want to, I feel differently about that. But if it's something that they just are incapable of doing, like it's not in them to do that. A good example with this would be business. So there are some people that as a business is growing and it scales, they have a hard time scaling with the business. That just grows beyond them. Mm-hmm. And there's people that are like that who I will keep because I care about them and because they do provide value to me. Is what I'm saying making sense?
Yeah. I don't know if I 1,000% agree with what you're saying, but I get what you're saying.
Well, I mean, it's just a part of obligation. Like we've talked about this before. There's some obligations that as the oldest in the family, as a man, as a husband, as a father, I'm obligated to provide energy to our family, whether or not anybody wants to do self-reflection. And it's not, it's like there's moments where you have that are like that, and that I have that are like that. I don't think that anybody should be looked at as like they're just never going to improve, like forever, unless they're mentally incapable of doing that. People have seasons.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely true.
People have seasons where they just you need to lend your energy to them. And I'm not talking about narcissists that refuse to break eye contact with themselves when they're looking at the water and seeing the reflection, and who could, through their own choice, choose to participate a little bit more in reality as it truly is rather than their own version of it.
I just think it's hard to say, like, I don't know, where somebody's at and what they're capable of, you know? And so part of me always wants to think that someone can improve and they can put in that effort. But like, I do agree with what you were saying, that sometimes depending on the season, you know, what you're going through at that time, trials that you're experiencing, because I mean, certain things change you forever, you know, like I think we probably can do a whole nother episode about grief, but I'm just saying, like, I'm forever changed now that my dad's gone. And so I'm not the same person that I was before that happened. And so I think there is so much grace that comes in certain situations. Yes. But I do think that, you do need to be aware of what you can also handle, you know, and are you keeping the right people in your life? Because I know, like you said, there's some people in our life that we love unconditionally, and they're always going to be a part of your life, right? And there's other people that I think that you have to kind of ask yourself, is it worth it? You know, their mentality and how they affect me as a person. Is there effort on both sides? And are they take, or do they give some and give where they can or not? And so I just think I've done a lot of self-reflection, not only for me personally and my growth as Caitlin, but I also have evolved as an adult and taking control of my life and who I want a part of it and who's worth it to me, if that makes sense. So I think you can look at somebody and be like, yeah, they're doing their best, but that doesn't mean that I want them to be an energy source or I'm their energy source, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I think that's where self-awareness comes in. You know, you have to be able to view yourself and what you have available to give.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've had this conversation a lot actually with my family, and it makes so much sense. And it's been a huge transition for me because I've always loved having friends, being around lots of people. I'm pretty social and I always have been. I've talked a lot about this with my sister and my mom, but just like as we get older, our capacity shrinks because we have more to take care of. Like you were just saying, you're a father, you're a husband, you know, 10 years ago, you didn't have either of those roles, right? And so our roles change, our lives change. And part of me has held on to friendships or, you know, people in my life, right? But I think sometimes you just have to kind of shift and move on depending, because you look at yourself and your capacity, and once again, you self-reflect, and I can't give as much as I used to give. So I can only give so much to you, to Noah. I'm about to have another baby, right? And so it's probably even going to shrink more. And I do think I have to be careful with my circle and also what I'm willing to give, the effort that I'm willing to put in. And so I'm saying that transition for me has been really hard to accept, But I also feel like I've done a lot of reflection and realized it's okay. Like it's a natural thing, I think, for your circle to be smaller.
Yeah, it is natural. I think that that's something that I came to terms with a long time ago. I think it was easier for me because I'm not as social as you are. But yeah, that's a really hard thing to learn because as you get older, you not only do you recognize that your energy is limited, like your capacity is limited, but then it can also be hard to not have your feelings hurt when I don't know, people that you've cared about for a long time that you'd hope they would maintain enough energy for you. They don't always.
And I think it's easier for you to kind of forgive yourself almost. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but just like move on from things. And I feel like for me, it's really, really hard for me to move on and forgive myself because I've done a lot of work through therapy, especially, and reflecting, but I still hold on to the Caitlin that was 24 and made a lot of mistakes, like to this day. And I think about, and that's like something on me that I have to just push forward and forgive myself and realize I'm not the same person that I was then that I am now. And I wouldn't make the same choices or mistakes that I do now. And I know I was not a good of a friend back then, and there's been friendships that I've been really sad the way that they've turned out. I don't think it was all my fault, right? But there was a lot that I contributed to the reason why some of the friendships dissipated or just ended. And, but I also have tried really hard to like look at it and be like, I'm so proud of the Caitlin that's here today. I'm not the same person and I can't be held to that standard. Just like you can't hold somebody to the standard like how they were in high school, right? I mean, I'm sure we all did things in high school, especially that we're maybe like not proud of. Like you said, grace always comes in. And if somebody can't give you grace, it's okay because really at the end of the day, the only person that really knows me right now in the present is myself to an extent. We do the work to figure that out, but really is God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to kind of just have hope in that and have strength in that it doesn't matter what other people think. And I continuously have to remind myself that because I struggle with that. Things that I've done that maybe somebody still thinks this is the Caitlin that she is today, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that I want to kind of like relay this into this deeper like thought that I had. Because you're right, God's perspective of us is really the only one that truly matters. Because it's based in truth and reality. And it's a truth and reality. Oftentimes they're not not oftentimes, they're not subjective. Truth is truth, whether or not we realize that it's truth. It's independent of our perspective of it. And it exists independent of our perspective of it. I just had like this random thought come to me one night while you were watching some reality TV show and I was in bed and I was just asking ChatGPT questions. I love ChatGPT. I asked it, why is space dark? Like, why can't we see the light in space very easily? Because you can see the light hit the planets, but space is black.
yeah.
And the reason why is because space, the light from space, in order for us to see light, it has to bounce off something or we have to directly look back at it. Light, it comes from these things called photons. It's like these little energy packets and they come out from the sun. And the truth is that they actually fill space. Like all of space is filled with photons. But because of our, like how we are and our perspective, the only way that we can see light is if it bounces off something or if we look directly at the source of light. And I like to think of light as truth. I think from a theological perspective, with LDS, like our LDS theology, we have some really unique perspectives on light, being filled with light, with truth, with God being the source of all truth, with Christ being like the light of the world, and everybody being born with the light of Christ. There's just a lot of really rich symbolism that comes with light. And there's also some really cool things about light and truth that are like physical.
Yeah.
And actually, it's just the way that it works. Like, how unique is it that space, the way that we see it, like you see a picture of the planet from outer space and it's black all around except for Earth. It's not really like that. It's only like that because of our perspective. It's only like that because the camera can only capture light that way.
Yeah.
But the truth is that if we actually had a different perspective, space would be filled with light because it is filled with light. And to me, what that symbolizes is that truth is around us, independent of our perspective. It's up to us to either face towards the light, and sometimes that hurts. Like seeing objective reality and objective truth, it's not easy to look at the sun. In fact, you can't do it unless you have things over your eyes.
Yeah.
You know, like, do you remember when the solar eclipse was happening and everybody was selling those glasses?
Yeah.
And everybody was being warned, don't look at it without the glasses.
Yep.
I mean, how interesting is that? That truth sometimes can be really painful, but it is the source of, like, the source of truth. The sun, it can also be painful to look at. I can keep going on this thought process, but I asked ChatGPT if we had different eyes or a different perspective, if we would be able to see all the light.
Yeah.
And it said yes. The other interesting thing about light and photons is that they can never be destroyed. Light and truth exists forever. The way that it works in physics is that light and the energy that it gets, the further away it is from the source of light and truth, the weaker it gets, but it never diminishes, or it never completely goes away. It either gets absorbed by matter, absorbed by us.
Yeah.
And when that happens, heat happens, like you get warm, or it just gets scattered because it hits other things and it bounces off.
So how do you apply everything that you just said to kind of our topic, like self-reflection?
When it comes to people that are being stuck, I like to think of it as they just aren't able to look at the light directly, or they have glasses on, like their reality is such that their perspective, they can't see the light for what it really is. They can't see reality for what it really is. And for me, I like to think, and I try to live my life and try to align my perspective with objective truth. And again, you know, everybody has personalities and biases and perspectives that are impossible to completely erase. Like, I can't completely remove my own self from my own perspective. But I also think that that's why we can never obtain perfection in this life. Like, we can never, like, even in the scriptures, if you think about God and you equate it to the sun, him being the source of light, we can't look directly at the sun, and the scriptures say that we can't look directly at God in our current form, otherwise it would, like, obliterate us.
Yeah.
You know, but when you think about Moses and other prophets of God that have been in God's presence, they went through this process called transfiguration. In a way, you can kind of look at it as putting on, like, the correct glasses. Like, something about them changes so they can be in his presence and so they can absorb truth and light in a way that's not going to burn them to a crisp. And that's something that, you know, we're not going to necessarily have the privilege of that, but I think that it's up to us to align ourselves as closely as we possibly can and absorb as much light and truth as we possibly can in this life. And then the parts that we can't see, or the parts that, like, the amount that we're unable to align ourselves with it, as long as we're doing our best to absorb as much as possible, I feel like that's where the grace of Christ comes in and makes up the difference. Maybe people think it's just like a random ramble that doesn't have any real connection to what it was that we were talking about. I think that people who struggle with self-reflection or struggle with self-awareness are standing so close to themselves in the mirror that they can't really see anything else other than their own perspective. And it blocks out it blocks out light. It blocks out truth. It blocks out perspective. Like, it's limiting.
I think I wouldn't right off the bat read those quotes and think the thoughts that you think. But that's what's so cool about us as individuals and like your brain, that you could even connect all of those things to what we're talking about, you know? And I think it's really true. Like sometimes like people will say the term like rose colored glasses, or we almost have like a lens, you know, over our eyes. Or you could even say when it comes to what we believe, like that we lived before this life and then came down to earth for a purpose, right? And that we forgot. And the veil, I guess, was put over our eyes when we came down to earth. And so it's like we're limited, like you said, in this life in a way, because we're not going to be transfigured like Moses and have these experiences most likely. But that doesn't mean we're going to throw in the towel and just say we don't have to push ourselves, right, to become better or try to see the light. Like you said, I think we can push ourselves to a certain place or a certain limit, but that doesn't mean we're going to get every single perspective that you're talking about. But someday I think, you know, I believe we will. And like you said, I think everybody's different, where there's levels almost of maybe the self-reflection that somebody's able to really do.
You know, another thing, like we were talking about this in the car, you seeing those quotes and it helping you with your perspective of reality, of truth, and seeing the world as it really is. That's like light bouncing off of that quote, like truth bouncing off of that quote and coming to you so you can see it, and it changes your perspective.
Yeah. It's like a little piece.
Yeah. It's a way for you to see light. Now, when you think about that from a gospel perspective, I think that in life we have to be very careful with what sources we go to to trust like reality and in truth. Like think about news agencies like Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. Are they really trustworthy things to bounce, like for truth to bounce off of? Or is it being filtered in a way where there's an agenda and it's not completely in alignment with reality?
There's always going to be bias.
Yeah, there is always
Yeah.
going to be bias. People align their lives with the light that comes off of those sources. Like people choose which sources of light they're going to accept, like what things they're going to allow light to bounce off of, like which filter, which lens of life they're going to view things through.
Yeah.
And from a gospel perspective, there's a couple of sources that we know that we can trust. Number one, we can have a relationship with God. We can see light directly by looking back at the source. We can see truth by directly looking back at the source and having a relationship with God. But would you be able to see what's around you if you were just looking at the sun? No.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. And so a lot of times people ask, why is it not okay to just have a spiritual relationship with God? It is okay to have a spiritual relationship with God, and ultimately having a relationship with the direct source of truth, in my opinion, is the most important thing. But there's perspective when it comes to the reality that's around us and the time that we live in right now, where you have to have other sources that you can trust. One of them is the scriptures, the truth and light, the source of light and truth, God. Like we learn about him in the scriptures, and that changes our perspective because it allows us to see ourselves and learn. The prophets are that way. The scriptures are that way. There's a lot of other trusted sources that we can go to, but you have to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful. And you kind of have to have like this internal filtering where I feel like some people just accept things for the way that they are.
Well, I mean,
like they accept things for what people tell them.
We've had this discussion too, where I've heard people say, well, these are just the facts. And so what are your thoughts on that? Like when someone might tell you like, this is the research I've done, these are just the facts.
I would ask, what source? Like, what is the source of the facts? Because that question or that statement was in regards to church history. It was.
I think so,
It was
yeah.
in regards to church history. I've dived so deep into this, so deep into this. And the funny thing about it is that there is not a single thing when you dive deep enough into it, when you dive deep enough into the context of the situation, that doesn't really make sense. Like it makes sense. And were people perfect? No. But when you base yourself in truth and reality and understand that people are people and that people aren't perfect, I mean, you allow there to be room for like mistakes to happen.
Once again, grace.
But
Well, and like you were saying too, the times, like we've had this discussion before of like where people were at with the world around them, right?
Yeah, you can't. So it'd be like somebody judging what somebody else was seeing, like their version of truth or like their perspective or like their source of light. Maybe I'm going too deep into this. I don't know. Like what was around them was different than what's around us now.
Exactly.
It's like cultural relativism.
Yeah.
It's inappropriate for us to judge right now through our lens things that people did that was within societal norms then.
I just think because we've had this discussion a lot. And so I actually do think it's going deep, but I'm saying I do think that all of these things connect. And we could go even farther, way farther than we even have. You know, it's just something to think about, like you said, to be careful where you're getting your source of light and your source of truth.
You need to be careful what things you're allowing light to bounce off of, because it's always going to come with a filter through it, you know, and
there's always a bias too. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, like you said, the only thing you truly can trust, I think, is your heart and like your feelings. I mean, but once again, we've talked about feelings and
actually, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't agree with always trusting your feelings.
No, I know. And it's not even like, I'm talking about when it comes to spirituality, going off of experiences that you've had. I'm saying nobody can take those things away from you. Right. And I think a lot of these things, not that people can take it away from you. It's more just like they can't relate. Right. Like I might have a specific experience that I had with God that no one's ever going to understand but me. And so sometimes I just think about that where you're like, it's a feeling that I have, right? That this is truth. Like the Book of Mormon is true, for example, or Heavenly Father is my father. That's true to me because of what I felt, right? But we've also talked about that your feelings aren't always valid. So it's just interesting me trying to connect spiritual experiences that I've had and trusting in that, but also that could be a feeling. And is that not valid? Do you get what I'm saying?
When I think about this, I really don't think that the feelings that I felt are really just chemicals in my brain that are dumping and causing me to feel certain things. I think that when I felt what I felt in the past, that like has given me my witness that the church and the gospel and the priesthood, all these things are true. I feel like it was objective truth coming and I was receiving it. It wasn't something that just internally from my own bias. It was something that was so true and pure that I could feel it being absorbed, like my body was absorbing it from the outside. Like it came from the outside and went straight into me. And it wasn't like, so.
But once again, nobody can feel that or understand that but you.
But that's why I say, like, I don't necessarily equate it to feelings, because it wasn't just like, I feel like feelings almost kind of diminishes it in a way.
So what would you call it? An experience?
I mean, you could call it feelings, but there has to be this understanding that it's not just like explainable and dismissible as biomechanisms of my brain.
But couldn't somebody say to you, it's just true to you because you were the one that felt it?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe that, because I believe that it came from the source of truth, and a source of truth that is independent of my perspective.
Okay. See, that's interesting for me to think about that, because I think that could be an argument with someone, you know, that it's just
they can argue with me all I want.
It's your personal experience that somebody could say, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's my personal experience, but I think that I could never be shaken, or my opinion could never be changed. That truth is objective and independent of my perspective of it, and that the witnesses that I've received were pieces of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rather than my own truth. I don't believe in own relative truths. I think that truth is truth, and that people have pieces of it, like other religions have pieces of it.
Yeah.
And there is truth mingled with the opinions of men, but there is a difference between the truth. There is pure truth. The mere thought that truth could be mingled with the opinions of men means that there is a objective truth that exists independent of the philosophies of men.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
As you can tell, I love thinking like philosophically, and I just love thinking super, super deep. And sometimes I do it at the most random times of the day. Like literally, we'll be watching Love is Blind, and I'll be on my phone asking ChatGPT questions and questioning like where my thoughts are in relation to object. Like
You go down rabbit holes.
yeah, I go down really deep rabbit holes, but I love it. And I like to make sure that my thoughts connect and that they make sense. And to me, even though this has been super deep, everything connects to me and it makes sense to me. The fact that everything connects is proof that it's real. I'm not smart enough to come up with these things all on my own, and I
Yeah.
don't think that anybody is smart enough to come up with all these things on their own. I truly believe that truth exists independent. I think that 2 + 2 = 4, whether or not anybody ever thought about it or whether or not anybody had that perspective. Like it just is.
It is what it is.
I think that it just is. I think that truth is that real. It's tangible. It's real. It has a source. I think that ultimately God is the source of all truth and light. And it's been super interesting to me to have this discussion. And I appreciate you willing to indulge my rabbit hole because it is deep. And I'm not trying to say that I'm deep, like I'm deep and I'm philosophical and I'm cool, but it's just the way that my brain works.
Yeah, no, I love
It's like-
having deep conversations with you, really anyone, but it's fun to just kind of see how your brain works and to learn from your perspective. And we all have different perspectives, like you said. And I think no matter what, most people could agree that growth is necessary, and I think especially for what we believe in the morals that we have, I think that we believe that that's the purpose of our life here on earth, is to change and to grow. And I'm grateful for that, honestly, because I think it can be really easy to say I'm good, like I'm good where I'm at. I've done the work I need to do, whatever, I think you can, like you said, you can go through phases or whatever. And maybe there's a phase where it's like a little roller coaster and maybe you are kind of on this line, and then there's an experience or a moment where God just pushes you to grow even though you don't want to, right? And so it's necessary, and I think we're becoming always, and we should be becoming always, who God intended us to be. And so I'm grateful for that knowledge, even though sometimes I don't want to be pushed, or I don't want to have to go through the things that I have to go through, or you just can't even imagine what happens, right, in your life until it actually happens. Like, did I think I would lose a parent in my 30s? No, but it is what it is. Like, sometimes things just happen. And I truly believe, like you said, there's just some things we're not fully going to understand until we're gone, and I think that God can show us why that happened, and all the pieces will come together and make sense. But until then, we kind of have to trust, and we have to just have hope and learn from the things that we're given. And if we don't, that's kind of on us. And I can't do that for anybody else. I can't do the work for anybody else. And I've learned that, and that's something that I take, especially from these quotes, is that I'm my own person. Even like when you're married, like there's a lot of work that you need to do, I need to do. We can't do that for each other. Do we hope that our spouse does those things? Yeah, of course. But we can't be the one to do that for them. You can encourage somebody, right? But at the end of the day, it's up to them. And so...
And the purpose of this life, like salvation and exaltation, salvation is a very personal thing. It's independent of each other. It's me and God and you and God. But exaltation is a you and I thing. And that's why our partnership is so cool.
Yeah. And, I'm so grateful for that commitment and that choice that we made to, like you said, exalt each other and grow with each other. But there's always going to be personal things that we both deal with individually from each other that we just have to put in that work ourselves, right? And so I think hopefully you guys liked this episode and these thoughts. I mean, we could go deeper and deeper and deeper into this, and I think it would be fun to to have another episode talking about grief. But yeah, I think it's really important. It's really important. Self-reflection and your inner work is crucial, in my opinion, to becoming our best self. So I kind of wanted to end the episode with another quote that really isn't related, but it just kind of like made me happy, if that's okay. Okay, here's the quote. A big part of being happy is being excited. Be excited about everything. Making a cup of tea, seeing a friend, the next episode of your favorite show, buying something you've been saving up for, sunsets, traveling, falling in love, live a life you are excited about. I know it's not related to this topic at all, but those are just like a few quotes that came up on my feed that just made me reflect and also just made me happy. Just living a life that you're excited about is important, you know, because I just wanted to end on a happier note, just because I do feel, like I said earlier, this heaviness in 2024, just like I said, with natural disasters and all these things going on. And it doesn't take away from any of that. I just think that, especially like on the topic of God, I do believe that God wants us to be happy, you know, and he wants us to live a life where we have moments that we're excited about to experience, you know. And sometimes, me especially, I'm sure you can you can attest to this, I get really hung up on little things, right? And I struggle with, I don't know, like somebody had said on TikTok, like the key to a good marriage is kind of like, for example, she had said that her husband always leaves like cupboards open. Like he gets a cup out and he leaves the cupboard open. And she learned that, you know, she was like, I'm just going to take it into my own hands and I'm going to shut the cupboard even if he leaves it open. I'm not going to like get irate and mad at my husband every single time that he does that. Right. And I think for me, it relates in a way that like someone might do something super, super small that bothers you, which I don't know. It's not that it's not valid. It can bother you still, but I'm just saying, like, to not care so much about these little tiny things, but instead kind of looking at life like, I don't know, just being more grateful that you even have a husband, or you get these moments of like small happiness, like it says in that, like drinking a cup of tea, or I guess I'm trying to savor little moments, if that makes sense, but not being too hung up on the little things that might bother me. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah. So just something to think about, that
savor the moments.
There's so much more to life than just,
and to be excited.
Yeah. Just being hung up on things that bother you, I guess. And I think life can slip away from us if we focus too much on the things that bug us. I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway, I just thought that was something happy to end on. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. We really appreciate all of the support with the podcast. And if you could rate, review, subscribe to like our YouTube, our Spotify, Apple, that would be amazing. Just keep sharing with your friends, and hopefully we can have, you know, more discussions about just like mental health, all these different topics in the future. Cause I think in different ways, like this really does, I guess we enjoy it. I think both of us in different ways talking about it. So thanks again, guys, and welcome to the zoo.